At my husband's will reading, my daughter-in-law Fiona locked me in the laundry room, declaring, "Only family participates." My own son agreed. Through the thin door, I heard them discuss my future and a mysterious heir. I listened, silent and shocked, as my life unraveled. They thought they had won, but I always remember everything. Like this story, share it, and let me know where you're listening from. A haunting question formed. If Fiona was truly surprised by the mysterious heir, why did she know exactly what to do next? The heavy click of the lock still echoed in the small, sterile confines of the laundry room. My daughter-in-law, Fiona, had just slammed the door shut, trapping me amidst the hum of the washing machine and the faint scent of fabric softener. It was the day of Arthur's will reading, a moment I had dreaded and braced myself for. Yet nothing could have prepared me for this calculated act of cruelty. My husband of 43 years, Arthur, had been gone for just 3 weeks. And already, I was being relegated to a back room, denied a rightful place at the table where his final wishes were being unveiled. "Only family participates, Eleanor," Fiona had stated, her sharp Irish accent cutting through the solemn atmosphere of the living room, even as she physically maneuvered me towards the utility room. Her grip on my arm was firm, surprisingly strong for her petite frame, and her eyes held a cold, unyielding resolve I hadn't seen before. It wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered with an almost triumphant smirk. Before I could even register a protest, I was inside, the lock turning with a sickening finality. My heart hammered against my ribs, not just from the shock and indignity, but from the sudden, sharp pain of betrayal. Through the thin wood of the door, I could hear muffled voices. Then, clearly, my son Liam's voice, tinged with a dismissive weariness, echoed from the living room. "Mom gets too emotional about these things," he said. "It's better this way." My own son. His words were a dagger, twisting in the fresh wound of grief. To be dismissed as merely emotional when my entire world had just collapsed felt like a cruel joke. It wasn't emotion. It was sorrow, love, and a profound sense of loss. And now, a growing current of bewilderment and anger. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to catch every word. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, began to read, his voice formal and measured. Then came the bombshell. A mysterious heir was named as the primary beneficiary of Arthur's estate. The air in the living room seemed to thicken, and I heard a sharp intake of breath. Fiona's voice followed, sounding almost panicked. A high-pitched exclamation of disbelief that momentarily gave me pause. A mysterious heir? Utter shock coursed through me, momentarily eclipsing the sting of Liam's betrayal. Arthur? My Arthur? The man I had shared nearly half a century with, who had shared every secret, every dream, every financial decision? He had never once, not in 43 years of marriage, breathed a word about any other child, any secret relative, or even a distant, unknown beneficiary. It simply didn't make sense. Arthur was a meticulous man, private but always transparent with me about anything significant. This revelation felt like a cruel twist of fate, a stranger stepping into the life Arthur and I had built, claiming what was rightfully ours. The discussion continued, muffled but audible. I could distinguish Liam's deeper tones mixing with Fiona's more strident ones. They were talking about liquidating assets. And quickly, too. I heard phrases like swift resolution and expedited process. And then, a line that chilled me to the bone. And provide for Eleanor in a small apartment somewhere. My home, the house Arthur and I had built our lives in, the garden I had nurtured, the memories etched into every wall. It was already being discussed as belonging to someone else, and my future was being casually relegated to somewhere. After what felt like an eternity, the lock finally clicked again, and Fiona swung the door open, a tight, artificial smile plastered on her face. Her earlier panic seemed to have vanished, replaced by a steely composure. "Well, Eleanor," she announced, her voice clipped and decisive. "It seems Arthur had a surprise for us all. The house and most of his assets will go to this beneficiary. Liam and I will manage everything. Of course. Manage everything." The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken meaning. It was clear she was positioning herself as the one in control. The new matriarch. My eyes immediately sought Liam's. He stood beside Fiona, his hands in his pockets, his posture stiff. When our gazes met, there was no warmth, no sorrow, no apology. Only a cold, calculating glint that confirmed his complicity, solidifying the sickening feeling that this had been orchestrated. He had known, or at least suspected, and had chosen his side. And that side was not mine, Fiona continued, oblivious or uncaring of the silent exchange between mother and son. Arthur did, however, leave you a small provision, Eleanor. Enough for a nice little apartment in that new senior community, you know, the one with the lovely gardens and social activities. She said it with a bright, almost cheerful tone, as if she were delivering wonderful news. The words hit me harder than any physical blow. A small provision, a nice little apartment, a senior community. It was a euphemism for being cast aside, for being put away. I was unwanted, relegated, a burden to be conveniently placed out of sight. My home, my life, everything I had known for decades, was being systematically dismantled and handed over to an unknown entity. All while my own son stood by and watched, actively participating in my displacement. That night, alone in the vast, suddenly empty house, the echoes of Fiona's words reverberated in my mind. The shock of the mysterious air was still profound, but beneath it, a new, unsettling thought began to form. Fiona's initial reaction, that almost panicked sound, seemed at odds with her subsequent composure and quick readiness to manage everything. If she truly had been surprised by this mysterious beneficiary, how could she have so swiftly, so confidently, known exactly what to do next? How could she have instantly formulated a plan for the liquidation of assets and my relocation to a small apartment somewhere? The pieces didn't quite fit, leaving a haunting question lingering in the silence. Was Fiona truly surprised, or was her performance merely part of a much larger, more sinister plan? I began to suspect foul play regarding Arthur's final months, wondering what conversations he'd had that I wasn't privy to. The sun had barely risen the following week when the quiet sanctity of my home was shattered. I woke to the sound of unfamiliar voices and the crunch of boots on the gravel path outside. Peering through the lace curtains, my breath hitched. Strangers were in my yard, carrying clipboards and tape measures, meticulously documenting every shrub and flower bed. Fiona was among them, her head thrown back in a laugh, her voice clear as she directed them. "Yes, we need to move quickly," I heard her say, "for the estate sale preparation." Estate sale. The words were a cold slap. Before I could even fully dress, she was inside, leading a team of assessors through the living room. "What is going on?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and growing indignation. "Fiona, what are these people doing?" She turned, her smile tight. "Eleanor, darling, we need to prepare the house for sale. You heard Mr. Davies. The bulk of the estate goes to the heir. This is all part of the process." Just then, Liam appeared, materializing silently beside his wife, a shadow of support. "Mom," he began, his tone weary, as if addressing a petulant child. "We need to be practical." Practical. The word echoed hollowly in the grand entrance hall of the home Arthur and I had built together. Within hours, my cherished world began to disappear beneath a flurry of white stickers. Arthur's antique mahogany desk, a sturdy sentinel where he had written countless letters and plans, received a stark white tag. Our elegant dining set, where we had hosted decades of family dinners and holiday feasts, was marked for sale. Even my grandmother's china, passed down through generations, delicate hand-painted roses now obscuring a cold, adhesive rectangle, was not spared. Each sticker felt like a personal affront, a brutal erasure of our shared history. I watched, helpless, as they systematically categorized our lives. Then Fiona approached me, a predatory glint in her eye. She pointed to the triple-strand pearl necklace I wore, a magnificent string of lustrous pearls Arthur had given me for our 20th anniversary. It was my most treasured piece of jewelry, a symbol of our enduring love. "That necklace," she stated, "is considered marital property. It belongs to the trust now, For liquidation. I stared at her. The truth finally, terrifyingly, crystallizing. The speed, the efficiency, the cold precision of it all. It wasn't just opportunism. It was premeditated. "You've been planning this," I whispered, the words barely audible, yet heavy with accusation. Fiona didn't flinch. Her smile didn't waver. "I've been preparing for contingencies, Eleanor," she replied, her voice smooth as silk, but with an underlying steel that sent shivers down my spine. One must always be prepared. The casualness of her admission was more chilling than any outright confession. Contingencies. What kind of contingencies did one prepare for regarding their husband's will? Unless she had known about the mysterious heir, or perhaps even engineered the entire situation. The next few days blurred into a suffocating nightmare of isolation. My landline phone, a comforting link to friends and familiar voices, was disconnected without warning. The internet, my window to the outside world, vanished. My beloved car, a gift from Arthur for my 70th birthday, was suddenly too expensive to maintain, according to Liam. "The estate can't justify the cost, Mom. We're being prudent." Prudent for whom? I felt like a prisoner in my own home. Severed from communication. Stripped of my independence. Desperate for a sense of normalcy, I decided to walk to the corner store, just for some milk. The short stroll, once a pleasant routine, now felt like an escape. Mrs. Lee, who ran the store and had known me for years, greeted me with a sympathetic but confused expression. Her eyes scanned my disheveled appearance, the slight tremor in my hands. There was a pity in her gaze, mixed with a hint of concern, as if she thought I was losing my mind. It was then I realized the insidious effectiveness of Fiona and Liam's actions. They weren't just stealing my assets. They were systematically eroding my reputation, making me appear unstable and incapable. Returning home, I found Fiona showing a young couple around the house. They were bright-eyed, eager, pointing out features with the enthusiasm of prospective buyers. Fiona beamed at them, a perfect hostess. Then, catching sight of me, she turned to the couple. "And this is Arthur's widow, Eleanor," she announced with an almost theatrical sweep of her hand. "She'll be moving to a lovely senior community soon. It's been quite a difficult time for her, you understand." The words were delivered with a practiced blend of sympathy and finality, sealing my fate in front of strangers. I was already gone, already relegated. That night, unable to sleep, I lay in the dark, listening to the muffled voices from downstairs. Fiona and Liam were still awake. "The jewelry is quite valuable, Liam," I heard Fiona say, her voice hushed but excited. "More than I expected." Then Liam's response, flat and devoid of emotion. "She'll adjust. She always does." The casual cruelty of his words pierced the darkness. Adjust, as if my entire life could be neatly packed away into a box, and I would simply conform to whatever new, small existence they had planned for me. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The speed of their actions, the precision with which they moved. How had Fiona known exactly what lawyers to call? How to freeze Arthur's accounts? How to initiate an estate sale so quickly? It was as if she had a pre-existing blueprint. The mysterious heir now felt less like a shocking revelation and more like a convenient, carefully constructed excuse. A smokescreen behind which they could seize everything Arthur and I had built. A chilling thought began to take root, blossoming into full-blown suspicion. What if this wasn't just about money? What if there was something more sinister at play? I began to question Arthur's final months. Had he truly been himself? Had he made any last-minute changes to his will? Or had he been influenced? What conversations had he had that I wasn't privy to? The idea that Arthur, my loving husband, could have been manipulated, or worse, felt like a betrayal from the grave, igniting a dangerous spark of defiance within me. Patrick then warned me about any papers Fiona might have pressured me to sign. 3 agonizing weeks had passed since Arthur's funeral. Each day, a slow erosion of my dignity and autonomy. Fiona and Liam's systematic dismantling of my life continued relentlessly. One afternoon, seeking a small refuge from their relentless presence, I wandered into Arthur's workshop. It was the one place they hadn't yet touched, perhaps because its dusty, masculine aura held little appeal for Fiona's fastidious nature. The scent of sawdust and oil, distinctly Arthur, filled the air, offering a bittersweet comfort. My gaze fell upon his old, battered toolbox, sitting in its usual spot on the workbench. It felt wrong, somehow, to leave it there. As I reached for it, intending to move it to a safer place, my fingers brushed against something tucked underneath. A manila envelope, slightly yellowed with age. It wasn't just hidden. It was wedged carefully, deliberately, out of sight. My heart gave a strange lurch. The envelope was addressed to me in Arthur's unmistakable handwriting. For Eleanor, it read, the elegant loops and strong downstrokes so familiar. Below that, in slightly smaller letters, a chilling instruction. Open, only if something happens to me. My hands trembled as I carefully broke the seal. Inside, I found 2 items. The first was a crisp business card, bearing the name Patrick Murphy, attorney at law. The second was a short, handwritten note from Arthur. It spoke of the Sunflower Trust. Arthur used to call me his sunflower, a private endearment referring to my resilience and my tendency to always seek the light. Even in difficult times, the note continued, in his firm, loving hand. You are not what they'll tell you that you are. I made sure of that. A wave of profound emotion washed over me. Grief, relief, and a burgeoning sense of hope. Arthur had known. He had anticipated this. He had planned for it, creating a trust, and keeping it secret even from me, his wife, for my own protection. He truly was my rock. Even in death, the realization was a balm to my bruised spirit, a lifeline in the sea of despair. As I returned to the house, clutching the envelope, my mind racing, I heard Fiona's agitated voice. She was on the phone, speaking in rapid, hushed Irish, a language I only understood in snatches. Then, abruptly, she switched to English, her tone becoming urgent. Yes, we must close quickly, she said, her voice tight with suppressed excitement. Before complications arise. My blood ran cold. Complications, that word again. Was Arthur's secret what she referred to as complications? That evening, I waited. I watched Fiona and Liam settle into their usual routine, their laughter echoing through the house, a stark contrast to my own quiet turmoil. As the house finally grew silent, and I heard the unmistakable sounds of them settling into bed, I crept out of my room. My destination was Arthur's desk, now stripped of its personal effects, ready for sale. I needed to find a phone number, any number, to reach Patrick Murphy. The disconnected landline and taken car made any outside communication feel like a monumental task. After a frantic search through the drawers, I found an old address book, hidden under a stack of utility bills. There, listed under L, was lawyer Patrick Murphy, with an office number and an address. The next morning, before Fiona and Liam were awake, I slipped out of the house. The crisp morning air was a welcome shock after the stifling atmosphere within. I walked, purposefully, 12 blocks, my feet aching by the time I reached the familiar blue booth of a payphone outside the old diner. With trembling hands, I deposited the coins and dialed the number. A crisp, professional voice answered, Patrick Murphy's office. How may I help you? My name is Eleanor Mitchell, I stated, my voice barely a whisper. I believe I need to speak with Mr. Murphy about Arthur Mitchell's will. There was a brief pause on the other end. Then, a calm, gentle voice came on the line. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Patrick Murphy. I've been wondering when you'd call. His words, devoid of surprise, instantly put me at ease. He knew. Arthur came to me about 8 months ago, Patrick began, his voice reassuringly calm, concerned about what might happen to you should he pass. He specifically mentioned his apprehension about Fiona's influence over Liam, and how that might complicate things for you regarding his estate. My suspicions had been correct. Arthur had seen it coming. He had known the greed that simmered beneath Fiona's polite facade. Patrick continued, explaining the intricacies. Arthur created the Sunflower Trust specifically to protect you. He had overheard conversations, hints of plans for senior communities and asset liquidation, that deeply troubled him. He wanted to ensure your security, your comfort, and your rightful inheritance. My heart swelled with a mixture of love for Arthur's foresight and fury at Fiona's malicious intentions. The will that was read at your house, Mrs. Mitchell, Patrick explained, was what we call the public will. It was deliberately structured to be a decoy. Arthur filed a separate, sealed trust document, the Sunflower Trust, which supersedes the public will. This trust, by its very nature, is a private agreement that does not have to be publicly disclosed. Then came the words that changed everything. You, Mrs. Mitchell, Patrick said, his voice firm but kind, are the mysterious heir. The Sunflower Trust makes you the primary beneficiary of Arthur's entire estate. The world tilted on its axis. I, the dismissed, the relegated, the cast-aside widow, was the true beneficiary. The irony was exquisite. Fiona and Liam's entire scheme was built on a lie, a carefully constructed illusion Arthur himself had created. The public will, Patrick elaborated, was designed to draw attention, to protect the true trust from being contested. It's much harder to challenge a trust, especially one already established, than a public will. Before hanging up, Patrick offered a crucial warning. Mrs. Mitchell, please be extremely careful. Do not sign anything Fiona or Liam may pressure you to sign. And do not, under any circumstances, reveal that you know about the Sunflower Trust. They will undoubtedly try to get you to sign away your rights, perhaps under the guise of managing your small provision. Do you understand? I understand, I whispered, a new resolve hardening my voice. The game had changed, I calmly stated. I'm not claiming anything. It's already mine. It always was mine. Liam weakly tried to intervene, but I reminded him, family doesn't lock family in laundry rooms. Family doesn't try to steal inheritance. Family doesn't treat family like a burden to be discarded. As Patrick Murphy's words settled, a new, sickening wave of understanding washed over me. Guardianship papers, I murmured, the phrase tumbling out almost instinctively. Fiona has been trying to get me to sign guardianship papers. She said they were just precautionary. For my own good, I recalled the stack of documents she had placed before me a week earlier, filled with legal jargon I hadn't bothered to decipher, trusting her words, even as my instincts screamed otherwise. Patrick's face, usually so composed, went visibly white. His grim expression solidified. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, his voice now laced with a renewed urgency. Those papers would have given Fiona complete and utter control over all your assets. Every single penny, every piece of property, every single decision regarding your inheritance, including the Sunflower Trust. Once signed, they would have made you legally incapable of managing your own affairs, rendering the trust's protection almost useless against her. The revelation struck me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just about the inheritance, the house, or the money. It was about my very independence, my autonomy, my right to make my own choices. They weren't just trying to steal Arthur's legacy. They were trying to steal me. The betrayal was immense, unfathomable. Liam, my son, was complicit in a plan to strip me of my agency, to render me powerless. A cold, hard resolve began to crystallize within me, solidifying the fragile hope that Arthur's trust had ignited. Patrick, seeing the fire in my eyes, offered a grim smile. Now, Mrs. Mitchell, he stated, his voice now filled with a quiet determination. We let them know exactly who the mysterious heir is. I was prepared to confront them that very evening, armed with the truth. But Fiona and Liam, in their haste and arrogance, beat me to it. The next morning, at the breakfast table, a table now bearing a sold sticker, an agonizing reminder of their swift actions, they sat opposite me, an air of forced formality about them. Fiona placed a fresh stack of papers before me, her smile tight and artificial. Eleanor, she began, her voice sugary sweet, the estate situation has become, shall we say, more complicated than anticipated. She paused, eyeing me carefully. We need your signature on these documents for immediate access to your inheritance. It's just a formality to ensure everything moves smoothly for you. My hands, despite my newfound resolve, trembled as I picked up the top document. My eyes scanned the headings, and a familiar sense of dread crept in. Transfer of decision-making authority. Incapacity provisions. Financial guardianship. The very words Patrick had warned me about, now staring up at me in stark black and white. "This," I stated, my voice quiet, surprisingly calm, as I pushed the papers back across the table. "This says you want to control my money." Fiona's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. "Eleanor, darling, it says we want to protect your money. Until you're settled in your new community, of course. It's for your own good, you understand. You've been under a lot of stress." Something inside me snapped. The patronizing tone, the thinly veiled condescension, the audacious lie. It was too much. I slowly pushed my chair back and stood up, drawing myself to my full height. The trembling in my hands ceased, replaced by a steely calm. My voice, when it came, was steady, clear, and resonated with an authority I hadn't felt in weeks. "I understand that you've been planning this for months, Fiona. I understand that you've been preparing for your contingencies, as you so eloquently put it. And I understand that you're lying to me." Liam, who had been quietly sipping his coffee, choked slightly. His face went pale, his eyes darting between me and Fiona. He seemed to sense the shift in the air, the fundamental change in my demeanor, but I wasn't finished. I met Fiona's gaze directly. My own eyes, unflinching. "And I understand that you're lying to me because—" I paused, letting the words hang in the air, thick with unspoken meaning. "I know about the Sunflower Trust." The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Fiona's coffee cup, midway to her lips, froze. Her flawless smile shattered, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated shock. Her eyes widened, and a faint tremor ran through her hand. Liam's mouth fell open, his jaw slack, the color draining from his face entirely. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence in the room heavy, charged with their stunned disbelief. Fiona was the first to recover, though her composure was visibly strained. Her Irish accent, which usually softened her words, now thickened, revealing a tremor of genuine fear. The what now, Eleanor?" she stammered, feigning ignorance, attempting to regain control. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do, Fiona," I countered, my voice gaining strength with each word. "It's the trust Arthur created. The one he put in place to protect me from people like you. The one that makes me the primary beneficiary of his entire estate. The one that makes me, in fact, the mysterious heir you were so panicked about." Liam's chair scraped loudly against the polished floor as he shot to his feet, overturning it in the process. "That's impossible!" he exclaimed, his voice incredulous, almost a shout. "There's no such thing. Arthur wouldn't do that." I looked at my son, my heart aching with a complex mix of sorrow and anger. "Oh, but he did, Liam," I replied, the bitterness evident in my tone. "Arthur knew. He knew what you two were planning. He knew the depths of your greed. And he made sure I would be protected." Fiona's carefully constructed mask finally, spectacularly, slipped, her face twisted with a mixture of fury and disbelief, her features contorting into a snarl. "You manipulative old woman," she spat, her voice no longer sweet, but raw and venomous. "You think you can just waltz in here and claim everything? After all our hard work?" I simply looked at her, then at Liam, who seemed to shrink under my gaze. "I'm not claiming anything, Fiona," I stated calmly. "The ultimate truth. It's already mine. It always was mine. Arthur ensured that." Liam weakly tried to intervene, mumbling something about family. But I cut him off, my voice rising, imbued with all the hurt and betrayal they had inflicted upon me. "Family?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Family doesn't lock family in laundry rooms during their husband's will reading. Family doesn't try to steal their inheritance. Family doesn't try to strip them of their independence. And family certainly doesn't treat family like a burden to be discarded. The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation, marking the decisive end of their reign. Fiona, unmasked, screamed, "He was a fool. You're a pathetic old woman who wasted her life playing house." I told Patrick to press charges. As sirens grew, I told Liam, "You knew she hated me. And you chose her anyway." The atmosphere in the dining room crackled, thick with the weight of my words. If you've been with me this far, you know this story is about more than just money. It's about betrayal and finding strength. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like mine. Fiona, her face contorted in a mask of rage, lunged for her purse, her fingers fumbling for her phone. "I'm calling our lawyer!" she shrieked, her voice high and desperate. "You're mentally incompetent, Eleanor. You're clearly confused and trying to manipulate things. Call him," I said, my voice steady, imbued with a calm authority that surprised even myself. I walked towards the door, ready to leave. "Better yet, call Patrick Murphy. He's Arthur's estate attorney, the real one." Their faces, already pale, drained of any remaining color. The name Patrick Murphy hung in the air like a death knell to their carefully constructed scheme. Fiona stumbled back, her hand falling from her purse, her bravado evaporating. Her desperation morphed into a sickening plea. "Eleanor, please," she cried, her voice cracking. "We need this money. Liam's business is failing. We have debts. So many debts." She turned to Liam, tugging his arm. He remained frozen, staring at me with a mixture of fear and dawning horror. Fiona swung back to me, her eyes wide, tears beginning to well. "He's your son, Eleanor. Your only son. You can't do this to him." I looked at Liam, who now seemed to be shrinking into himself, his earlier coldness replaced by a pathetic vulnerability. My heart, which had been a battleground of emotions, was now cold and resolute. "My son," I replied quietly, each word weighted with sorrow and finality, "died the day he locked me in that laundry room." Liam's face crumpled completely. He took a hesitant step towards me, his hands outstretched. "Mom, please," he whimpered. "I'm sorry. I really am. Let's be a family again. Please." "No," I said, the single word feeling like a cleansing, liberating exhalation. "We can't. Not anymore." My gaze hardened. "I'm meeting with my lawyer this afternoon. We'll be discussing charges of attempted fraud and elder abuse." Fiona gasped, her face contorting again, this time with a primal fear. She played her last, most vicious card. "If you do this," she hissed, her voice low and venomous, "you'll lose Liam forever. You'll die alone, Eleanor. With no one." I paused at the threshold, turning back to Liam, who was still standing by the table, his face a picture of weak defeat. The truth of my life, the quiet solitude I had unknowingly endured for years, finally surfaced. "I've been alone for years, Liam," I said, my voice heavy with a profound sadness. "I just didn't realize it until now." With that, I turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind me, sealing their fate and my freedom. At Patrick's office, the quiet professionalism was a stark contrast to the chaos I had just left. He listened patiently as I recounted the morning's confrontation and confirmed my fears. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his expression grim, "the guardianship papers, combined with their actions, constitute clear elder abuse and attempted fraud. We have a very strong case." Just as he finished speaking, the outer office door burst open. Fiona stormed in, a defeated, utterly shamed Liam, trailing behind her. "You manipulative old hag," Fiona shrieked, pointing an accusatory finger at me. "You're trying to ruin us. You're manipulating your own son." Patrick remained calm, rising slowly from his desk. He held up a thick file. "Fiona, Liam, perhaps you'd like to hear what Arthur foresaw." He meticulously documented his concerns. Patrick began to read from Arthur's handwritten notes, his voice clear and unwavering. Entry: October 12th. Fiona overheard discussing putting Eleanor in a home if anything happened to me. November 5th. Noticed Fiona accessing my online banking without my knowledge, ostensibly to help Liam's business. December 1st. Fiona researched senior care facilities and asset liquidation procedures. Liam's face, already pale, flushed crimson with shame, as each word painted a damning picture of their deceit. Fiona stood rigid, her eyes darting nervously. Then, Patrick read the most chilling entry of all. January 18th. Overheard Fiona to Liam. The old woman won't live forever. And when she's gone, we'll inherit everything anyway. We just need to speed up the process. The air in the room grew heavy with revulsion. Speed up the process, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. I looked at Fiona. My eyes narrowed. What else were you planning, Fiona? How else were you going to speed up the process? Fiona's composure finally snapped. Her shoulders slumped, and she sagged against the doorframe, defeated. I put sleeping pills in your evening tea, she confessed, her voice barely audible, thick with raw confession, for weeks. Just a small dose, to make you seem more confused, more fragile, so that it would be easier to get you to sign the papers, to prove your incompetence. Patrick immediately reached for his phone. His expression was no longer grim, but hard and resolute. That, he stated, his voice ringing with indignation, is criminal assault. I'm calling the police right now. Before he could dial, a final question, a desperate need for understanding, compelled me to speak. Fiona, I asked, the mysterious heir clause in the public will. Why did Arthur include that? What did it mean? She raised her head, her eyes vacant, stripped of all pretense. He told me about it, she admitted, her voice flat. Months ago. He said he was testing me, to see if I'd still take care of you. Out of the goodness of my heart, even if he hadn't left you everything directly, he said it was his way of ensuring his family would genuinely care for each other. Her eyes flashed with sudden, venomous anger. He was a fool, a sentimental old fool. And you're a pathetic old woman who wasted her life playing house. Press charges, Patrick, I said, my voice cold and unwavering. As the distant wail of sirens began to grow louder, drawing closer to the office, I turned to Liam, whose head was bowed in absolute shame. You knew she hated me, Liam, I whispered, the finality of my words echoing in the room. And you chose her anyway. At 69, I had finally learned the most important lesson. The person whose approval I needed most was my own, and I finally had it completely. 6 months later, the world felt different. The air in my garden was alive with the gentle hum of bees and the vibrant yellow of blooming sunflowers. Arthur had planted them years ago, a cheerful border that always turned its face towards the sun. Now, they felt like a personal symbol, a testament to my own journey. I sat on the old wooden bench, a cup of herbal tea steaming in my hands, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun on my face. This was my garden, my home, my peace. Justice, swift and precise, had been delivered. Fiona, faced with Arthur's meticulously kept notes, my testimony, and the undeniable evidence of the guardianship papers and the sleeping pills, had been arrested. Patrick Murphy had ensured that the charges of elder abuse and attempted fraud stuck. She accepted a plea deal, avoiding a lengthy trial but facing significant legal consequences. The last I heard, she was serving time, and had lost nearly everything. Liam, stripped of Fiona's influence and facing the stark reality of his choices, had filed for divorce. He came to me once, a few weeks after Fiona's arrest, a broken, hollow shell of a man. He stood on my porch, tears streaming down his face, begging for forgiveness, for a chance to be my son again. My heart ached for the boy he once was, the loving child who had vanished behind Fiona's manipulative shadow. I looked at him, truly looked at him. And for my own peace, I forgave him. Liam, I said gently, I forgive you, for the pain you caused, for allowing yourself to be led astray. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I've built a new life now, a life that is truly mine, and it doesn't have a place for the kind of pain we shared. His face crumpled further, but he simply nodded, accepting my words with a quiet dignity I hadn't seen in him for years. He turned and walked away, and I haven't seen him since. The house, my sanctuary, was now legally and indisputably mine. Patrick Murphy had overseen every detail, ensuring Arthur's clever trust was fully enacted. The public will, a decoy designed to draw Fiona and Liam's greed into the open, had served its purpose. My inheritance, every asset Arthur had ever intended for me, was secure. In the weeks following the legal proceedings, as I began to truly reclaim my space, I discovered another hidden gem, Arthur's personal journal, tucked away in the back of his desk. It wasn't a diary, but a series of meticulous observations and notes, detailing Fiona's escalating manipulative behavior and his growing concern for me. He had documented her probing questions about his finances, her subtle attempts to isolate me, even his heartbreaking realization that Liam was falling under her sway. The most precious entry, scribbled just days before he passed, brought tears to my eyes. "Eleanor doesn't know how strong she is," he had written, his handwriting a little shaky towards the end. "She'll discover she's been a warrior all along. She just needed a reason to fight." Arthur, my beloved Arthur, had seen the fire in me, even when I couldn't. His final gift wasn't just financial security, but the profound revelation of my own innate strength. My world, once shrinking, began to expand. Mrs. Lee from the corner store, her face etched with genuine remorse, visited me one afternoon. She tearfully apologized for not trusting her instincts, for having allowed Fiona's whispers to make her doubt my sanity. I assured her it was understandable, and we shared a pot of tea, blossoming into a true friendship. The invitations started to flow in. Neighbors, who had been hesitant before, now offered condolences and congratulations. I joined a local book club, signed up for art classes at the community center, and even enrolled in a travel group. The pity in people's eyes had vanished, replaced by a deep respect. They saw me not as a grieving widow or a helpless old woman, but as a survivor, a fighter who had reclaimed her life. Every choice was mine. Every decision was mine. Every day was mine. The feeling was intoxicating. I even started planning a cruise, a grand adventure, just for me. A few months ago, a letter arrived. It was from Liam. He was in therapy, had found a new job in another state, and was actively working to become a better person. He spoke of remorse and hope for the future. I read it, acknowledged his efforts, and then carefully filed it away. My happiness no longer depended on his choices or on the fragile hope of a fractured relationship. I had learned to nurture my own joy. As I watered Arthur's sunflowers, their bright heads turned towards the midday sun, I reflected on my journey. Arthur's trust had secured my future, but his true, most profound gift was the revelation of my own strength and worth. At 69, I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. The person whose approval I needed most was my own. And I finally had it. Completely and unequivocally. My story was not one of tragedy, but of rebirth, justice, and a vibrant new beginning.